For over 2 decades, the mineral-rich heart of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Goma, has been a battleground, where warlords, rebels and governments collide in a brutal fight for power. But one group stands out, M23. Some call them freedom fighters, rising against corruption and injustice. Others see them as Rwanda's secret weapon, a ruthless proxy force with deeper motives. But who really controls M23? Where do they come from? And is this just another chapter in Congo's endless cycle of war, or something far more dangerous? This is the story of the origin of the M23 group currently destabilizing the Congo. Imagine a country so rich in resources yet trapped in endless conflict. That's the story of the Democratic Republic of Congo, a land caught in the crossfire of powerful forces for decades. It all started in the 1990s when the old government of Zaire collapsed. Chaos followed as neighboring conflicts spilled over, bringing war right to Congo's doorstep. Angola's civil war raged on one side, while the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide created a wave of instability on the other. The entire region was a powder keg waiting to explode. When the First War broke out, a rebel movement, backed by Rwanda, Uganda and Burundi, rose up and took down Congo's longtime ruler, Mobutu Sese Seko. He had been in power for decades, but when his allies turned against him, his grip on the country crumbled. In his place, Laurent-Désiré Kabila stepped in, but many believed he wasn't truly in charge, that he was just a puppet controlled by Rwanda and Uganda. Then, in 1998, everything changed. Kabila pushed back against Rwandan and Ugandan influence, cutting ties with his former allies. They weren't happy about it. Almost immediately, another war erupted. Rwandan forces even attempted to overthrow Kabila, leading to brutal clashes across the country. This time, new rebel groups emerged. One of the biggest was the Congolese Rally for Democracy, RCD, a movement born in the eastern regions, once again with heavy backing from Rwanda and Uganda. But Uganda didn't stop there. It also supported another rebel faction, the Movement for the Liberation of Congo, MLC, led by businessman-turned-warlord Jean-Pierre Bemba. Unlike the First War, Congo's other neighbors weren't just going to stand by. Countries from the Southern African Development Community, SADC, including Zimbabwe and Angola, jumped in to support Kabila's government. Meanwhile, the Congolese army, known as FARDC, struggled to hold its ground. By 1999, the war had reached a deadlock. The fighting was brutal, but no side could claim full victory. The United Nations even stepped in to monitor the situation. But the conflict took a new turn when Rwanda and Uganda, once allies, turned against each other. Their armies clashed violently over control of the city of Kisangani, a key strategic and economic hub deep inside Congo. At this point, the rebels weren't just one unified force anymore. The RCD itself splintered, forming different factions: RCD Goma, backed by Rwanda; RCD Kisangani Movement of Liberation; RCD KML, backed by Uganda; RCD National, a breakaway faction that later aligned with the MLC, but they weren't the only ones in the fight. Local self-defense militias, known as the Mai Mai, also took up arms, some supporting the government, others fighting for their own interests. Meanwhile, another group, the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, a Rwandan Hutu militia, was also operating in eastern Congo. Some of its members had ties to the 1994 genocide, adding another layer of complexity to an already chaotic war. Of all these factions, one stood out: the RCD Goma. They held firm control over the eastern provinces, particularly North and South Kivu, and ruled from the city of Goma. Once a peaceful lakeside town, Goma quickly transformed into the political and trade capital of the rebellion, a city where power and war intersected. In the middle of all this chaos, something shocking happened. Laurent-Désiré Kabila was assassinated in 2001. Just like that, his rule was over. But instead of crumbling, the government passed the torch to his son, Joseph Kabila, who suddenly found himself leading a country still caught in conflict. For years, world leaders had been trying to bring peace to the Congo, but nothing seemed to work. Finally, after countless meetings and negotiations, the Sun City Accords were signed in 2002, an agreement led by South Africa that was supposed to end the war and unite the country. This peace process led to the 2006 elections, where Joseph Kabila was officially elected as president. But there was just one problem. Not everyone accepted the results. Many rebel groups felt the election was unfair, and some refused to recognize Kabila as their leader. Among the most powerful of these groups was RCD Goma, which had refused to merge into the National Army. Instead of backing down, they launched a new rebellion. By July 2006, this rebel force had reorganized under a new name, the National Congress for the Defense of the People, CNDP. And at the center of it all was their leader, General Laurent Nkunda, a man who had been through it all. Born in Rutshuru, a town north of Goma, Nkunda was a Congolese Tutsi with deep ties to Rwanda. He had once fought with the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, the same rebel army that took down the government responsible for the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Later, he was part of the Rwandan-backed forces that helped bring Laurent Kabila to power during the First Congo War. Nkunda wasn't acting alone. By his side was a fierce and ambitious commander, Bosco Ntaganda, another Tutsi fighter with a history just as complicated. Unlike Nkunda, Ntaganda was actually born in Rwanda. He had also been part of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, helping to overthrow the Rwandan government after the genocide. But he didn't stop there. Ntaganda had a dangerous reputation. He had been involved in some of the bloodiest conflicts in the Great Lakes region, including the violent clashes in Ituri in 2002, a conflict so brutal that some feared it could turn into another genocide. By 2006, the International Criminal Court, ICC, had indicted him for war crimes. Many believed that his involvement in the rebellion was, at least in part, his way of avoiding capture. As the fighting dragged on, neither the United Nations peacekeeping mission nor the Congolese army, FARDC, could stop Ntaganda and the CNDP. The rebels quickly seized control of large parts of eastern Congo, including key mining areas and trade routes, valuable assets that made them even more powerful. At the same time, whispers of Rwandan support for the CNDP spread everywhere. Many suspected that Rwanda was backing Nkunda's forces behind the scenes, but no solid proof ever surfaced. After months of battles and failed peace talks, something unexpected happened. Nkunda was suddenly overthrown. His own deputy, Bosco Ntaganda, turned against him in January 2009, seizing control of the CNDP. Just a few months later, on March 23, 2009, the Congolese government and the CNDP finally signed a peace deal. The agreement promised that the rebels would be integrated into the national army and that the rights of Kinyarwanda-speaking Congolese would be protected. But even after the deal was signed, something felt off. The CNDP rebels never really merged with the army. Instead, they operated their own secret chain of command, refusing to fully surrender their power. Then, in April 2012, everything exploded again. A faction of former CNDP rebels, led by Bosco Ntaganda, mutinied against the government. This time, they weren't just any rebel group. They had a new name and a new mission. They called themselves the March 23rd Movement, M23. And they had one clear demand. The Congolese government must honor the 2009 peace agreement that they claimed had been broken. To understand why M23 is fighting, you have to go back, way back. This isn't just about territory or power. It's about identity, survival, and deep-rooted conflicts that have shaped Eastern Congo for generations. At the heart of it all is a community known as the Banyarwanda, people of Rwandan origin, including Tutsis and other groups, who have lived in Congo for decades. But their place in Congolese society has always been uncertain. Laws were changed, rights were questioned, and at times, they were treated as outsiders in their own country. M23 claims that one of its main missions is to protect Banyarwanda communities from threats, especially from an enemy they believe is still lurking in eastern Congo, the FDLR. The Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, is a Hutu rebel group that has been hiding out in the DRC for years. It was originally made up of former Rwandan soldiers and militia members who were involved in the 1994 Rwandan genocide. While today's FDLR fighters are mostly younger recruits with no direct ties to those events, its leadership is still known for anti-Tutsi ideology. For M23, this isn't just a political fight, it's personal. They see themselves as a shield against another potential genocide, standing against groups like the FDLR. But that's only part of the story. M23 also argues that they are fighting for the legal recognition of the Banyarwanda people as full Congolese citizens. This has been a long-standing issue, made worse by Mobutu Sese Seko's rule, when laws on citizenship were constantly changed to serve political interests. The March 23, 2009 peace agreement was supposed to fix some of these problems, but M23 claims the Congolese government never kept its promises. Then there's another layer to this conflict: the role of Rwanda and Uganda. For years, there have been whispers, and sometimes outright accusations, that Rwanda and, to a lesser extent, Uganda have been pulling the strings behind the scenes. Some say they're using M23 as a way to maintain influence in eastern Congo. Why? To counter threats like the FDLR, which still operates in the region, to protect a powerful economic and political elite, a group tied to Rwanda that benefited during the RCD Goma era and still controls key resources, to maintain control over valuable trade routes and mining sites. And that last point is huge. Eastern Congo is one of the richest places on Earth when it comes to natural resources. Beneath the ground lies a fortune: diamonds, gold, copper, timber, and something even more valuable in today's world: coltan and cobalt. These minerals are essential for making smartphone batteries, laptops, and electric vehicles. The region is also a major trade corridor. Goods from the Kenyan port of Mombasa pass through Uganda and into the eastern Congolese cities of Goma and Bukavu. Controlling these border towns means access to wealth. Rebels like M23 have found ways to profit through informal taxes on trade routes. When M23 launched its rebellion in 2012, it wasn't as big as the CNDP before it, but it was just as aggressive. The rebels quickly took control of former CNDP strongholds, and despite being smaller in numbers, they proved to be a major force on the battlefield. Time and time again, they defeated the Congolese army, FARDC, in battle. Then came their biggest move, the capture of Goma in November 2012. This was a turning point. Goma wasn't just another town, it was a major city, a strategic hub, and a symbol of power in eastern Congo. The world watched as M23 held the city for 10 days before international pressure forced them to withdraw. But the damage had been done. M23 had proven that it wasn't just another rebel group. It was a force capable of challenging the government itself. At first, M23 claimed to be fighting for justice and protection, especially for Tutsi and Banyarwanda communities. But their actions told a different story. Even as they justified their cause, they were responsible for brutal attacks on civilians, including the very people they claimed to defend. The most infamous moment came when they seized control of Goma, leaving fear and destruction in their wake. But power struggles soon tore them apart from within. Tensions grew between M23's leaders, and things got even worse when Bosco Ntaganda, one of their top commanders, unexpectedly surrendered to the International Criminal Court, ICC. Many believed he was trying to escape the chaos within the group. As M23 weakened, the United Nations stepped in. In 2013, the UN Security Council authorized a new combat force under MONUSCO, its peacekeeping mission in the Congo. Unlike previous efforts, this force was given the green light to go on the offensive. Working alongside the Congolese army, they pushed M23 back, until by the end of 2013, the rebellion collapsed. For almost a decade, M23 seemed to disappear. Apart from a few minor clashes, they remained mostly inactive. But that all changed in late 2021. This time, M23 claimed that the Congolese army had attacked them first, just months after Kinshasa declared martial law in the conflict-ridden provinces of North Kivu and Ituri. The government had announced a new plan to deal with armed groups, offering a demobilization program for those who surrendered. But M23 didn't trust the process, and instead, they came back stronger than ever. This wasn't the same M23. They now operated like a real army, using high-tech military gear, including night vision devices that allowed them to fight around the clock. They had longer-range weapons, advanced mortars, and heavy machine guns. All of this fueled suspicions that M23 was receiving outside support, and all eyes turned to Rwanda. At the same time, Congo's own national army, FARDC, was in deep trouble. Despite its large numbers, the army was riddled with corruption. Soldiers often didn't get paid, commanders ran parallel chains of command for their own benefit, and instead of fighting rebels, Some units were caught working with armed groups like the FDLR in illegal mining and smuggling operations. As the conflict in eastern Congo spiraled out of control, tensions between Congo and Rwanda hit a breaking point. President Felix Tshisekedi openly accused Rwanda of backing M23, a claim that was backed by the African Union, the European Union, and even the United States. In 2022, a United Nations report stated that the Rwandan Defense Force, RDF, was directly involved in reviving M23, supplying them with weapons and operational support. Rwanda denied everything. At the same time, Rwanda pointed fingers at Congo, accusing it of harboring and supporting the FDLR, a group that Rwandan President Paul Kagame considers a direct security threat. The hostility between the two countries reached a boiling point on January 24, 2023, when Rwanda shot at a Congolese fighter jet, claiming it had violated Rwandan airspace. In an attempt to calm the situation, Rwanda and Congo agreed to a peace pact in November 2023, brokered by the United States. Both sides promised to reduce their military presence on the border, stop inflammatory rhetoric, and avoid interfering in each other's politics. But any hope of peace was quickly shattered. On December 9, 2023, President Felix Tshisekedi compared Paul Kagame to Adolf Hitler, deepening the divide between the two nations. Frustrated with the slow-moving efforts of the East African Community, EAC, Congo turned to SADC, Southern African Development Community, for help. On February 29, 2024, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that 3,000 troops would be deployed as part of a regional mission to push back against M23. Soldiers from Malawi and Tanzania also joined the fight, working alongside Congolese forces to stop M23's advance. As the battles rage on, thousands of families are caught in the crossfire. Villages near Goma and Sake have been emptied, with people fleeing for safety as gunfire and shelling continue. South African peacekeepers now patrol the roads, standing guard against further attacks. If you found this documentary informative, be sure to hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe.